Okay, hi everyone. I think we're live. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Nikki, and I post videos here on YouTube about my editing, my writing, but also my reading and the other things I love. And at the moment, I'm doing this series on my language learning. If you're a past viewer, welcome back. So this is the sixth video now in this language learning series. And as you can see from the banner just beneath me here, we've reached a point now where I'm going to go through my 8 foreign languages and talk about each of them in turn, one per month, and just look at how I started them, what got me into them, what materials I used to study, how I'm continuing with my language learning, what I love about the languages, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to just get rid of this banner and swap to another one here. Here we go. Okay, let me move back a bit too, so I'm better in frame as well. Before I kick off, I will say apologies if it's a bit noisy here. We have some roadworks or some resurfacing being done on the street, not my street, but the one around the corner. But there are constantly vans and trucks and reverse beepings and various things going on. I'm also expecting a parcel delivery, which I'm hoping by doing this first thing in the morning, it will be done before the parcel comes. But if the doorbell rings and I have to run off and answer it, apologies. We'll see how we go. I've got washing going too, so it's all happening today. But anyway, let's get back to the topic, which is how I started learning German. So German is the first language I started learning as a foreign language, which is why, although I'm ducking out of order with Icelandic, you'll find at the end, essentially I'm going to go through these languages in the order I started learning them. So I started learning German in the first year of high school. I went to a grammar school, and if you're not familiar with the English school system, at age 11, you take a test, the 11 plus. I assume it's still the same as in my day or close to it. And that's really a test to decide where to put you if there are splits in classes, so that when you go to high school, if there's a sort of top tier maths class and a one for lower tier, that test will sort you into which one you're going to be taking. However, we also have grammar schools in England, which they're still free, but they're schools where you have to take their own exam in order to be accepted into them. So they only accept that sort of upper tier of students. So when I was 11, I took 2 grammar school entry exams. There were 2 grammar schools in travelling distance for me. Luckily, I passed both, so had my choice. And the one I picked did 2 foreign languages. Whereas generally non-grammar schools mostly stick to 1. I mean, not completely. It would depend on the school and what their focus is. But in grammar school, we did 2. So the first of these was a toss-up. And in the first year, you either got put into French or German. And I got put into German. So this was my first experience of any foreign language learning. I didn't do anything through primary school, which is quite usual in England as well, which I don't think is brilliant. I think we should start doing foreign languages earlier. And occasionally a primary school does do one. I don't want to blanket say no primary schools in England do foreign languages, but it's not a firm part of the curriculum, or at least it wasn't when I was at school. So German was my first language learning experience. And I really loved it straight away. I got on with it straight away. In fact, let's perhaps move to the next banner here. How did I find it? I got on with it straight away, and I found it quite easy to memorize, to understand. In fact, it was really interesting because in my school life, we never got taught grammar properly learning English. So understanding grammar terms, what's an adjective, what's a noun, and things like that, prepositions, none of that was taught to me in English as I grew up. And I only came to understand those terms when I started learning foreign languages. And in many ways, that's actually really helped going on to learn other foreign languages, but also to better understand how English works as well. Just understanding the terms, how you put sentences together in a way that you didn't study until I did German. I always got decent marks in German. I was one of the top of the class, and so that was encouraging as well to me, that I was enjoying it and I was doing well at it. And my first German teacher was a bit of a character. I won't say too much, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but yes, we did have a bit of class gossip about her. But then we got a new German teacher who was actually a native German speaker. And I had a really excellent rapport with her, and I liked her teaching style. And that enabled me to really press on and advance even more in German. Let me move on to the resources that I used then. So learning in the classroom, I don't know whether we followed a textbook. I don't have a memory of buying a textbook. And generally, I have kept a lot of my language resources, like even from stuff I used as a beginner. And I don't have a German textbook. So just going from memory, I think it was more that the stuff was just provided each lesson. And perhaps it came from a textbook originally, but we didn't actually go and buy that textbook. One book I have had since I started my first year of German is the hefty Oxford-Duden German dictionary here. So this book is actually a really good book. I mean, this book, I'm going to just look at the date in it because it is, I mean, I've had it since high school, so it is super, super old. 2001, right? So 2001 edition of this book. So that's what, 20 years old now. So that tells you I've been learning German for about 20 years. And yeah, it's one of those things, I think, with dictionaries. It's always in the back of my mind, maybe I should update them, but dictionaries are hugely expensive. And to be honest, 99, probably even 95% of the stuff in this book would not have changed. The only thing would be new terms, more modern technology, perhaps related terms that would be added in that are not in this edition. And occasionally I look something up in here and it's not there, but it's quite rare because mostly I'm using everyday vocabulary. And if there's something that's not in here, I just Google it, which is why I've not really bothered about spending a lot of money updating these, because I think for the bulk of what I need, this is fine. And the internet is such a great resource that if there's an odd word or two that I still want to look up, I can find it online. So I have had those. I also bought fairly early on during school days these two little books, which so we've got the Collins Gem German Grammar and Collins Gem German Verb tables. And these were really handy because they're pocket size. I used to be able to shove them in my school bag, take them with me. And these were not requested books, but because I was enjoying German, I did go out and buy extra resources, even during my school days, because I wanted to keep improving. By this time as well, I'd found a couple of German Penpals. And I'll talk about how I find Penpals and things like that a little bit later. I don't want to sort of disrupt the narrative too much, but so I did want extra resources to be able to enable me to read and write to them and do stuff outside of the classroom. And that included, I'm always been a huge musical theatre fan, and Germany and Austria love their musicals too. So by this time as well, I was also listening to musicals in German, including some original German language musicals such as Elisabeth, Tanz der Vampire. And again, I'll talk about those a bit more in a little while. So I took German for 5 years through high school. I had the option to continue. So at the end of 5 years, we do the GCSE exams. So I did my GCSE in German. I can't remember if it was an A or an A plus, one of the two for German. I think it was an A star, an A plus. And I had the option of continuing it for A level, which was another 2 years of study prior to university. However, I knew I wanted to do music A level. And by this time I'd taken up French as well. And I could have done the 3 A levels in, sorry, I lie. I was also doing English A level. So I could have done 4 A levels. I would have done English, music, French and German. However, we were given the opportunity to do a 1-year GCSE Italian instead of an A level. And in the end, that's the way I decided to go. And it became a case of, should I drop German or should I drop French? And it was a bit of a difficult decision, but in the end, I stuck with French for the A level because I'd done it for a year less than German. So I felt I wanted to improve it more. And I also felt it sat better together with Italian. So that's the only reason I stopped studying German. I also felt confident enough in German that I was happy to continue studying on my own by that point. So that is why I then quit German as a school subject, but I always carried on learning it. So moving us on to continuing studies. So after I finished school, I did end up going out and buying these two books. So this is probably in around the time I was at uni, just after. The Teach Yourself German and Teach Yourself Improve Your German. I actually got Teach Yourself Improve Your German first. And the only reason I went and got this one was just because of my need for mental completion, that it didn't feel like I had them. I needed to have them both to have the set, if you like. I mean, the initial Teach Yourself series, I find the Teach Yourself series overall quite good. As a general comment on the book series, I've started learning other languages with these as my initial resource, which is why I then went out and got them as well for German and French and Italian, just to have them as reference material as well. Because although most of it was stuff I already knew, there was the odd like little gem, like some vocab I hadn't come across yet, or just something explained in a better way and things. So they're not always perfect. I don't always like the topic style. I mean, I'll mention it more when we come to talking about learning Czech. But in the Czech one, there is this really bizarro dialogue scenario of a geologist arriving at Czech airport and needing to explain why he has so many stones in his luggage. I mean, I can't imagine any reason I would ever need to say any of this vocabulary. So there's the odd, like, funny thing, the same as you get in Duolingo and that. But on the whole, I think they are a good series. So if you were planning to learn German and wanted to teach yourself and didn't know where to start, these books are not bad, and they're not too pricey. So it's a fairly cost-effective way just to give you an introduction and get you started on your journey. I should say I'm not sponsored by any of these publishers or anything of these that I'm mentioning. This is just my personal opinion on stuff that I've tried over the years. The Improve Your German I did find fairly useful, though, because it went into a little bit more grammar detail, and that was good just as I was at that level where I'd completed the high school, but I just wanted to advance a bit. So I did get some benefit out of this one. I also bought one more grammar book for myself after. This one is probably, when did I get this? Just see what the date is in it. Oh, I haven't got a label. I usually label my books with my name, but this one is missing it. Okay, let me have a look. So this is a 2011 edition. So I would have got it sometime between 2011 and 2015, I would say. And this is another really good series of books, actually. I'll give you a better shot. So it's Modern German Grammar Practical Guide. It's a Routledge, going the wrong way, Routledge publication. Routledge do really, really good language resource books, but they are very pricey. They do some other good series, which I will show you as we move into some other languages. But those books are $60 to $80 each. I think this one was probably around the 50 mark. I mean, that's completely going from memory. I'd have to look it up to check now, but they're not cheap, but they are really, really good resources, and usually pretty well explained, but a lot of detail. So it depends what you're looking for. If you're someone who learns better by topics, learning phrases and such, then it's perhaps not for you. But if you're a grammar learner, then definitely it's worthwhile. So I'm just seeing, I just got a comment, but it was just junk. So we can ignore that. Okay. So yes, these are really in-depth grammar guides, which is just something I picked up much later in my German journey, just when I wanted to start to move from that intermediate to a more advanced level, that I felt I needed some more detailed grammar. So in terms of continuing my studies, once I finished learning it at school, I was still studying a bit myself, not in any really structured way, but I was writing to my pen pals. And perhaps now's the time to sort of talk about how I got my pen pals. So these days, pen pal hunting is more online, but back when I was looking, it was more of a sort of handwritten thing. So I had some pen pals already around the world, and there are things called friendship books that we send between us. And they're basically just little paper handmade booklets of a few pages that you put together yourself, and you put your name and address in there, perhaps a few of your interests, your age. If you're looking for something particular, like I'm looking for pen pals from Spain, you'd make a note of that. And then it gets passed around between people in letters. And as more names get added, you look back through the book and you say, oh, I really want to write to someone in Germany. And look, here's someone in Germany, and she loves musicals too. So you write an introductory letter. Hi, my name is Nicola. And see if they write back. And so I've had a lot of pen pals. At my peak, I was writing to between probably 45 to 50 people back in my teens and early 20s. These days, it's probably more like 25. It's pretty halved because some people have just dropped off over the years, like maybe they've started families, haven't got time to write anymore. A few others just prefer to keep in touch online now. But yeah, at my peak, I was a very avid pen paler, and I still would be, except that, as I said, other people have just not wanted to continue or can't afford to continue, because, I mean, when I first moved to Australia, it cost me, I think it was $1.65 to send a letter to Europe, and the price now is $3.50 just to send one letter. So it's not cheap anymore. So it can be a very expensive hobby if you have quite a few people to write to. And COVID, travel and postal times and things have really spun out of control the last couple of years. So it takes months sometimes for letters to reach me at the moment. So the last few years, I haven't been pen paling as much, but that's just the situation. I hope it will pick up again. But pen pals are a really great way to practice languages. And certainly that really helped me with my German, particularly in that transition period when I finished studying at school, but was wanting to keep it up. And I still write to people in German now. I have a couple of pen pals in Germany. I also have a pen pal in Latvia. Her English is not brilliant, and I obviously don't speak Latvian. So she is a German teacher. So we write to each other in German. So yeah, that's our common language between us that has enabled us to be pen pals. And we write quite long, chatty letters. And so that gives me really good practice. She does a lot of crafty hobbies. So I've learned plenty of vocab about knitting and things like that. So yeah, that's a brilliant way to keep up the languages. Obviously, these days, there are plenty of online options with things like HelloTalk and Tandem and italki and things like that as well, which I haven't really gotten into with seeking German friends at present. But it is something I'm considering in the new year because particularly for the speaking, I don't get to speak German very much at all anymore. It's easier to practice reading, writing, listening, but speaking for me, I have no one to speak to. So I am thinking of doing the occasional italki thing in the new year to practice German speaking. Practicing reading and that, it's pretty easy and straightforward. There are obviously websites. If you've got a particular interest, you can look up websites, magazines, online magazines and things like that, as well as, of course, print books. And you can get print books in German reasonably easily, I'd say. Amazon are likely to have some. Book Depository, I know, do stock some foreign language material as well. Just as an example, I bought this one here with me, which is Goethe's Die Leiden des jungen Werther, so a German classic. Older piece, so marginally more archaic language, but not majorly. And look, this is quite a small little book. How many pages is it? 160, but it's a very tiny book, as you can see. So it's probably only about half that if you think in normal book size terms. Also, it's worthwhile reading books that you know. So I do have a few books on my shelf in German, for example, Interview with the Vampire. So I've got Interview with the Vampire in German on my shelf. And that was a book I obviously had read and knew quite well in English. So that if you're wanting to get into reading, but you're perhaps a bit nervous about it still, obviously you can start with children's books, something like, The Never-Ending Story or Harry Potter, something like that, translated into German. And then as you feel more confident, you can move up to adult books. And starting with ones you know is perhaps a good way to go, so at least you have a rough gist of the story and you're just looking for the comprehension of the language. I also still do listen to a lot of German musicals and sing. That's the only speaking I do, singing German musicals really at the moment. If you look around on YouTube, there are tons of German musicals available that you can listen to some clips of. Sometimes they have English subtitles or the German subtitles. Some of my favorites are Elisabeth, Tanz der Vampire, Mozart, and Rebecca, a musical based on the book by Daphne du Maurier. So if you're a fan of that book or the old movie or even the new Netflix movie, it's a very nice musical adaptation of that. And then these days, what do I do now? Let's move on. I guess in some ways I've had lulls over time in my German learning. Not completely, because I've always been writing to my Penpals and I've always been reading the odd book and bits and pieces in German, but I haven't been really actively majorly studying for a few years, probably since I moved here, to be honest, because when I moved to Australia, I obviously can't do easy trips to Europe anymore. And so I lost some of that practice opportunity. And I had a lot going on when I first moved here as well, obviously, with visas and immigration and eventually getting my citizenship, and all this was going on. And languages did drop off a little bit. I did some, as you'll discover later, but it's really just been in the last couple of years. And I guess in some ways you could say COVID's helped, although for me here in Australia, we haven't been affected quite as badly as some other countries. So although things have changed for us, it's more been being locked in the country and having to wear masks. We haven't had anything too much major. I've had a couple of little working from home sessions, but mostly we've just been carrying on as normal here. So there's not been a major COVID thing, but it just happens to have coincided with that I've decided to start putting a bit more effort into all my languages again, not just the newer ones I'm learning. I don't want to forget. I felt that some of them, particularly some of the middle languages, so the ones that I've sort of learned after school, but still years ago, are getting a bit rusty, and I wanted to practice more. So I have made a concerted effort in recent times to, certainly in the last 6 months or so, to get back into it in a more regular basis. So what I'm doing now is I started off by looking around the internet for resources, things I might like to do. Initially, I was looking at things like SBS German. So SBS is a broadcaster here in Australia, and you can listen to German radio and bits and pieces on their website. And so I started doing that with French, German, and Italian, listening to their German news reports and things while I was doing some ancestry research and things like that. And I'm still doing that, but I also have bumped things up a bit and I looked around for some other resources. So one I quite like, another website is Jetzt, it's called now, and it's has a mixture of written news and podcasts, and it's aimed at a kind of younger audience, maybe I'd say people in their 20s and 30s, and it does a lot of stuff about talking about sexuality, LGBT, and sort of youth culture. So if that sounds like your sort of thing, it's worth checking out. You can have listening practice with a podcast. They have some articles you can read for reading practice, and it's very, very much sort of modern youth topics. Obviously, Deutsch Aktuelle, DW is a great site for the same kind of thing, perhaps a bit more sort of standard news, if you like. And one recent podcast I've found that I've started listening to is Durch, Gegend, which I'll also have mentioned below in the notes. And that has some more interesting and slightly more advanced level content. I've also been watching some YouTubers. 3 that I am going to continue watching when they put out new stuff are Deutsch mit Marija, Lingster Academy, and Lingoni German. Most of them are grammar focus, a bit of vocab. And so it's just if something comes up that I think, oh, that's an interesting piece of advanced grammar I haven't come across, or, oh, that's something that would be good to refresh. and just do a bit of revision on, then I'm watching those as well. Obviously, I love my musicals still, and my aim in 2022 is to do more reading practice again and to do a bit more writing, because I haven't had the opportunity to do as much writing the last couple of years because of the slow mail situation. I've not been receiving letters as quickly, so I've not been getting as many during the year to reply to. On the whole, I'd say my German is probably at a kind of, I would have said C1, but I would say B2 to C1 these days because it has gotten a little bit rusty. So I do want to kind of boost it a bit and get back up to that C1 to C2 level. And that's my aim during 2022. As with all my languages, and I'm going to end up saying this in every video, I think it's a case of my comprehension is way better than my output. So I can understand pretty much everything I read and hear. There'll be the odd word that I come across I haven't learnt before, but I'd be able to guess it from the context generally. My writing also is not too bad. I had to just look up the odd bit of vocab here and there. But speaking, because I haven't practiced speaking really for years properly, I feel very nervous and rusty about speaking. So that's something, again, as I mentioned, I'd like to think about doing some italki conversation practice in the new year. So we'll see how that goes. But that is basically my journey with German, which I did start, as the books tell us, about 20 years ago. So it's been a long journey. Sometimes I feel I should be more advanced than I am for 20 years, but it is one of those fluctuation things where I was pretty good and I was using it a lot, and then I've stopped using it a lot and the levels dropped off. And so now I am trying to just get it back up a bit again. But it's never completely left me, and I find it comes back to me, even if I think I've forgotten stuff. As soon as I look it up, I go, oh yeah, I do know it, just didn't spring to mind quick enough. So it's just going to be a matter of practicing to get back up to that kind of level, I will guess. So just looking, it's just another spam comment. The spammers are out in force today. Okay, so I think that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I don't think there's anything else to say. But if any of you have questions about German, how I learnt it, if there's anything I recommend for anything particular, do pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to help you. Obviously, because I learnt German at school, much of my resource and my initial learning came from there. I haven't really learnt online as a beginner. But that said, if you've got a particular question, do ask. And if I can help, I will. Next time, I'll be back in January and we'll be talking about French, which is the next language I took up. So I hope to see you all again then. And before that, I do have a couple more pre-recorded videos coming out in December. Plus, at the end of the year, I'll be doing what will be my very last book and film wrap-up vlogs. And I might do a kind of end of the year little one about my plans for 2022. But for today, I will close. I hope to see you all again very soon. Bye for now, everyone.